Welcome back to the Max Reality. If you've seen my face before, then you know the drill, but if you're new here, I love talking all things reality TV, but today we're going to do something just a little different, and we are going to talk about the life and times of entrepreneur Wally Amos. Now you may be thinking to yourself, in what world does this have anything to do with reality TV for you to bring it here to share with us? Well, little fun fact, Wally Amos was actually on Season 8 of Shark Tank with a new product he made later in his life that we will get into the video. That was actually how I first got introduced to him and his story, and recently he passed away, so I thought it would be interesting to just tell his life story. So let's begin. Wallace Amos Jr. was born in Tallahassee, Florida on July 1st, 1936 to Wallace and Ruby Amos. Around the age of 12, his parents ended up getting divorced, and he was sent to New York City to live with his Aunt Della. This is where his passion for cookies would begin, as she was the first person to teach him the craft. He went on to attend the Foods Trade Vocational High School in Manhattan, but eventually dropped out of high school to join the Air Force, where he served 4 years, mostly stationed in Hawaii, a place he would end up making his home later in life. After the Air Force, he came back to New York, where he was working loading trucks for Saks Fifth Avenue from 1957 to 1961. He knew he needed to move on to bigger and better to support his then pregnant wife, and left that job to go work in the mailroom at William Morris Agency. During that time, he would spend his lunch breaks teaching himself to type in the hopes of furthering his career. Eventually, that drive and dedication would prove to be worth it, as he became the first African-American agent at the agency. He booked names like the Supremes, Marvin Gaye, and Simon & Garfunkel, just to name a few. In 1970, he would leave the William Morris Agency to start his own agency in Los Angeles. One day, his client Sherry Summers came to a meeting with him with chocolate chip cookies she had made. They were delicious and immediately brought Wally back to all the great memories he had with his aunt. He asked Sherry if she wouldn't mind sharing the recipe with him, but it turned out to just be the recipe on the back of the Nestle Toll House bags. After that, Wally would make cookies his calling card, bringing them to meetings to stand out from the sea of other agencies. After 4 years of dazzling Hollywood with his talents and his cookies, he was approached by Quincy Jones's secretary, B.J. Gilmore, with the idea of them opening up a cookie shop together. He immediately jumped at the idea, but he didn't have the money to get it started. Luckily, the connections he had made over the years came through, and thanks to stars such as Marvin Gaye and Helen Reddy, among others, he was able to get the initial investment of $25,000 that he needed to start the business. On March 10th, 1975, Famous Amos Cookie Store was born. To celebrate, there was a star-studded grand opening party the day before, with a turnout so huge that they ended up stopping traffic on Sunset Boulevard. The success would continue as they made $300,000 in their first year operating. After that, they got the cookie into Bloomingdale's and became so big they had to open a factory just to keep up with the demand. The cookies became a nationwide hit, and then Wally made a move that would continue to rocket the company's visibility. Wally decided to close his partnership with Bloomingdale's in favor of a new deal with Macy's, putting him in front of millions every year for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. The company would continue to become a household name, and by 1981, it would be a $12 million company. While the cookies were great on their own, what really gave them the leg up was Wally Amos himself. Wally knew show business and how to sell something. That, combined with his fun-loving, energetic personality, made him instantly loved by the nation. He appeared as a guest on countless TV shows, appeared on the cover of Time magazine, and was awarded the Entrepreneurial Excellence Award by Ronald Reagan in 1986. He even had one of his iconic Panama hats and Indian print tunics put on display at the Smithsonian for their Business Americana collection. Wally was actually the first African-American businessman to be represented within the collection. However, behind the scenes, the business was struggling. To try and save it, he began selling equity to investors, but eventually he was left without a controlling share. By 1988, the company had lost $2.5 million. Then, in 1989, Wally left Famous Amos behind entirely. Along with that, he signed a 2-year no-compete clause and no longer had ownership of the name Famous Amos, Wally Amos, or use of his image in branding of any future cookie companies. One of my main resources for this video is a documentary called The Great Cookie Comeback, and in the documentary, when he was talking about how he lost the business, his reflection was just so good, I thought I should just play it straight from him.
I never knew the dynamics of business. Well, I just thought I was in charge. I thought I knew everything. I thought I was hot shit. And with that attitude, you discover you're not. Because you have so much success and people singing your praises and telling you this and that, and it's not true. But you didn't have the insight or the depth to realize that.
While the Shansby Group was in control of the business, they were able to turn it around. They cut costs of ingredients and focused on making a shelf-stable, affordable product that could compete with the likes of Keebler and Nabisco. However, their biggest play of all was to increase the distribution power by getting the cookies into the, at the time, booming world of membership stores and supermarkets and vending machines. By 1991, these strategies had proven to be effective as the company's sales were up to $42 million. The brand was later sold off to President Baking Company in 1992, then Kellogg's purchased it in 2001, and finally in 2019, it was sold to Ferrero Rocher, the current owners of the brand. One of my favorite moments in the documentary is when they're trying to get him to think about how things might have been different if he was more of a business guy. Through this, we start talking about how the cookies aren't as good as they used to be, but the company is still profitable and thriving. And his quote here just made my day. Seriously, there are so many good moments in the documentary. I definitely recommend checking it out. I have it linked down below in my resource document. It is the first one in there.
When a customer bites down in a cookie, the only thing that matters is that that cookie tastes good.
If you're giving them away for free, yes.
No, even if you're selling them.
Numbers matter, I think.
Yeah, numbers matter, but if you're selling them and they don't taste right and they're not right, then you're going to get bad numbers. That's common sense. You know?
But look at the flip side, though. Mm-hmm. Famous Amos today, admittedly, and a lot of people say this, and I know you agree, they don't taste like they did, but they're still making a lot of money.
But that doesn't, because they don't taste good, doesn't prove you can't sell them for cash. Big deal, you know. But I don't want to sell a product that doesn't taste good. I have no control over that cookie at all, and have not for a long, long time. And I don't give a damn what it tastes like.
Once the non-compete was over, Wally was ready to get back in the game, but he was met with many challenges. His first cookie brand was called Wally Amos Presents Chip and Cookie. However, the Shansby Group said that having his name on the packaging in any form was trademark infringement and sued him. Wally is then ordered by a judge that he may no longer use his name, voice, likeness, or signature to sell any new cookie brands as per the agreement he signed when leaving Famous Amos. However, the Chip and Cookie name did live on in a small cookie shop he owned in Hawaii for a period of time, and in a series of children's books that he helped to create. This leads us to Wally's other great passion, ending illiteracy in America. Over the years, he worked with different organizations such as Read to Me International, the YMCA, the American Library Association, and Literacy Volunteers of America, just to name a few. He would even go on to host his own TV show called Learn to Read. This was an adult educational series that aimed to help Americans beat illiteracy. In 1990, he would be rewarded for his dedication with the Literacy Award presented to him by George H.W. Bush, who would tell him, "Your greatest contribution to your country is not your signature straw hat in the Smithsonian, but the people you have inspired to learn to read."
My legacy will live on, not for cookies, but for thousands and millions of children that I help create an interest in learning and reading aloud and being a better person. That's what I want to do. Not how many cookies I sold. That's nothing. How many lives did I change?
Frustrated with his set of circumstances, he decided to change the name of his company to Uncle No Name, or Uncle No Name, which would later become Uncle Wally's. He was able to get that name after making a deal with Kellogg's that included him promoting his old brand Famous Amos cookies for a period of time. The name wasn't the only change though, as the cookie business was getting tougher and tougher, so eventually they transitioned from cookies to muffins, which did help the business. However, he eventually ended up selling that business, and like the famous Amos cookie brand, they still live on today, but with less star power than their predecessor. Wally wouldn't stop there though, and would jump right back into the cookie business. He went through a journey of trying out different names until finally he landed on the Cookie Kahuna, a nod to his home of Hawaii. This is the business that would lead him to dive into the Shark Tank, but that wouldn't have been the case if it weren't for his fifth wife, Carol, convincing him to go on the show. He sent his audition tape in May of 2016, and later that month gets the notice that he was accepted. A month later, he goes to Hollywood to film his segment with the sharks. In September of 2016, Shark Tank Season 8 Episode 3 would air, featuring the Cookie Kahuna. Wally walked into the tank looking for $50,000 for 20% of his new cookie venture, but unfortunately, he would end up leaving the tank without a deal. They were all very impressed with him, but because of his numbers and the fact that he couldn't use himself to promote any future business, none of the sharks really saw it as investable. One of my favorite parts about the episode of Shark Tank is Mark knows exactly who Wally is and his story, and talks about how much he's learned from him. Mark's reason he couldn't invest is actually because he was already in the cookie business. I assume he's talking about Alyssa's cookies, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Mark even tells Wally's story to all the other sharks after Wally has left the room, and Mark always seems to know all these random business stories and facts, and it's why he's one of my favorites, but this isn't a Shark Tank video, so we have to move on now. Wally talks about his Shark Tank experience very fondly. He admits that he knew more than likely none of the sharks would end up investing, but what he really went on there to get was exposure for his business and the fact that it was him who was making this new business, and that time in the tank would give him the Shark Tank bump of sales, at least for a little while. In September of 2016, shortly before his episode of Shark Tank would air, things would take a turn for the worse. After being behind months on rent, he is forced to move out of his home of 20 years and goes to live at the local YMCA. Around 9 months later, Wally walks away from the Cookie Kahuna after he and his partner had had multiple disagreements. His spirit never wavers though, and he continues to look at things with hope for a new adventure, which includes yet another cookie company, Wally Cookie Company, which he says will be his final cookie company. However, with the new company comes more change, as he signed an agreement with his former Cookie Kahuna partner saying he wouldn't sell cookies in Hawaii. So, Wally packs his bags and moves to Carolina to begin his new adventure. However, that's not where the changes stop. Because of his previous legal agreements, he couldn't use the name Wally, and instead decided to pay tribute to the woman who had ignited his passion for cookies all those years ago by naming it Aunt Della's Cookies. From what I can tell, it never seemed to gain much success and doesn't appear to have continued on today. In September of 2019, he moved back to his home of Hawaii, where he would continue to share his love of cookies with everyone until his passing from complications of dementia in August of 2024. Wally's life was a roller coaster full of extreme highs and lows, but through everything, his joy and perseverance remained. People can think of the negative of why he didn't do this or what if he had only done that, but at the end of the day, what truly matters is being happy, and by all accounts, Wally was never lacking in joy and ambition for his next adventure. I hope from Wally's story we can all take away that as long as you're happy, that's what truly makes you successful. To close us out, I want to read you one of my favorite quotes I read from him. In 2014, he told Honolulu Magazine, "Being famous is highly, very, very, very highly overrated. I am fortunate that through all the tribulations, all the ups and downs that I've experienced, I still make a cookie that tastes good." Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far in the video, I really appreciate it. This is a totally different style of video for me, and I had so much fun making it. So definitely let me know all your feelings, thoughts, opinions down in the comments. If you like talking reality TV, especially Shark Tank and business type stuff, feel free to give me a follow. If you liked the video, don't forget to like it, and until then, I'll see y'all in the next one.